Asia is changing. Today I'm going to fill you in on some of the most recent developments that we have spotted in Southeast Asia and why you may not have a future in Southeast Asia. I had a call very recently. I was talking to a client of mine. He recently visited Singapore and he was also in Malaysia, two places that I personally love. And if you've been in Southeast Asia, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The quality of life is really unlike anything that you have in most countries worldwide. It has a unique taste. Southeast Asia is like your Shangri-La. There are a lot of positive things there, but he was telling me about how Westerners, specifically Americans and Canadians, are perceived in the eyes of the locals these days. Due to all the noise that's being generated by the media, he pointed out how Americans and Canadians are perceived negatively in the region at this moment. And this cannot have a positive impact on the longevity of your presence in Southeast Asia. Wherever you live, you want to live in an environment where you as a foreigner are perceived as someone good. If you are perceived as less, then that is not a good foundation to build upon. Back in the day when I was in Southeast Asia, it all started in 2011 when I moved to Southeast Asia. I lived in Kuching, Malaysia, not in West Malaysia, but in East Malaysia, one of my favorite destinations across the globe. I had a fantastic time. I never regretted that I moved there because the trajectory of my life changed drastically. As a result of living in Southeast Asia, I had formed so many new relationships, friendships, partnerships. I had the best time of my life. But going back to the conversation I had with my client, he pointed out how he no longer feels welcome in the region. And he found this feeling particularly present while he was in Singapore. And he told me when he was in Singapore years ago, he didn't have that same feeling. He was not perceived the way. And so lots of things changed. And he said he doesn't want to live in the region anymore. He doesn't want to spend months or even years in the region where he's just not welcome, where it doesn't feel like home anymore. It's unfortunate that during the past health crisis, the trajectory changed to the downside. It's an undeniable fact. And this video is a reality check for all those who have not really woken up to the fact that maybe Southeast Asia does not entail a bright future for them. And if that's you, you really want to watch this whole video because there are some viable alternatives for you to consider. What's important is though, because people come in all different sizes, shapes, it's important for us to reflect and come to an honest confession. Where are we at in our lives? If we have a family, then maybe our children are primary priority at this moment in time. And maybe it's not possible for you to leave the region because you have family obligations in Southeast Asia. However, if you have the financial means to do so, you may want to consider relocating to a different region where you're just in a much stronger position. We're talking civil rights, property rights, where you can own land yourself, where you get permanent residency with a path to citizenship, which is almost unheard of in Southeast Asia. And owning property in Southeast Asia is very tricky. There are exceptions like Malaysia, Singapore, Cambodia, but Thailand, the Philippines, and Vietnam, Laos, all these countries, they're making it really, really hard for you to own property. And they have no path to citizenship. In Malaysia also, you have no path to citizenship. In Singapore, they can cherry pick because land in Singapore is severely limited. They have to be extremely mindful and careful about who they allocate the land to because at the end of the day, Singapore will eventually run out of land unless the country finds a way on how to expand its own national territory, which may never happen. Unless Indonesia and Malaysia are willing to sell some of their territory to Singapore, chances of it happening are slim to none, unless there's a war, and God forbid that should not happen. But Singapore has a very unique problem. It's a very strategic location in Southeast Asia, very strategic port. Many countries want influence in Singapore to have access to Singapore's port. You know, a good chunk of all the goods that are being shipped to China actually travel through that strait. It's a very, very important strait actually. Perception is reality, and how foreigners are perceived in Southeast Asia has changed since 2020. It's an undeniable fact. We have done a lot of videos on this topic. You can go watch our playlist on Asia and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Of course, this is a very sensitive topic. People are split, but some things were said that are just 100% true. And I think this mentality has carried on. And because of a lot of the media influence that people absorbed over the past number of years, it's unfortunate, but it is true that many locals in that specific region view foreigners as negative. It's just a matter of fact, and more and more people are waking up to this reality every day. Now the question is, if you are middle class, what should you do? If you want to have second residency, if you want to have permanent residency with a path to citizenship, if you want civil rights, if you want property ownership, if you want these prerequisites to a successful long life, because you need that, you don't want to be in a region where you could be dumped anytime and the next crisis may just be a few steps away. It's possible. Nobody knows. It could be a war, it could be anything. So you really have to decide, where do you want to position yourself? Where do you want to be invested? And you've got to make the choice before it's too late. You want to create options before you need them. You don't want to create options when you need them, because then it's already too late. And in an emergency situation like a war, it's very possible the borders will be closed again, that you may not have the opportunity to even leave the country where you're located in right now. And this could be for 5 to 10 years. If there's a war, it's very possible that this could happen. I know that we never saw such an extreme situation in our lifetime, but it is not unheard of. It is very much in the cards, and you have to decide for yourself what kind of probability we're talking about. Obviously, there are many variables to consider, but this probability is very much alive. Today, it's important for us to consider the different options that we have, and as long as we have some financial means to create options that make sense for our current situation and our future, I think it's a great idea to start creating these options today, not 5 years later, especially if you have the finances to do so. If you're in your 20s, especially early 20s, mid 20s, and you don't want to create options yet, I understand that, because during these years, these younger years, people often don't know what they want. People are all into having fun, and that's perfectly fine. So I'm not blaming you for wanting to have fun. It's a normal thing. I had a lot of fun in my 20s too. I traveled a lot. I was a digital nomad. Now I'm not a digital nomad. Now I'm more of an entrepreneur. I'm more of a person who spends time in some of the places that I like, but I no longer pivot like crazy between new places, because the thrill is gone. Once you've been to like 50 countries, you don't want that anymore. You don't desire it anymore. And if you have already done it, what's the point of doing it again? And as you get older, your whole sense for these things definitely changes. But if you are like in your late 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you don't have permanent residency yet, you want to get started on this as soon as possible, because the clock is ticking. You're running out of time. And wherever you want to position yourself, whatever geography you choose for yourself, could be Europe, could be Latin America. Latin America is a very big area, right? You have Mexico, you have Central America, you have South America, you have the Caribbean. You have tons of options where you can get civil and property rights, where you can obtain permanent residency with a path to citizenship. It is true that certain countries, especially the smaller countries in Latin America, don't make it too easy for a foreigner to obtain citizenship. They have their own individual fears for a good number of reasons, but countries like Mexico and Argentina, they do naturalize a lot of people. Of course, these two countries, Mexico and Argentina, are also the larger countries in Latin America, along with Brazil. But if you want to get citizenship, then Mexico and Argentina are just fantastic options. Whereas in Southeast Asia, you may never be able to obtain citizenship. It's not worth it. If you're part of the fun-loving crowd that wants to party all day, all night long, wants to travel all year round, if that's you, and you're like in your late teens, early 20s, mid-20s, go do that. Because you probably don't even know what you want yet. And nobody should blame you for this, because this is the most exciting time of your life, where you have no commitments, where you're free to do whatever you want to do. So I don't blame the younger generation. I don't blame Generation Z for that. However, millennials, Generation X, and of course the boomers, they need more security, and they need it now. Because in the event of a war in the region, and we have multiple wars already, we have one war in the Middle East, we have one war in Ukraine, and Asia could be next on the agenda. So we really have to consider, and we have to plan our moves strategically to position ourselves in a geographic location where we have the best chances for our personal success. I think this must be our utmost priority. How do we create these chances? Well, if you work online, if you're a digital nomad, if you need more money to create these options, put in the time now. Now, this channel, Nomad Elite, is all about showing the middle class how to survive and thrive in the 21st century. The majority of our clients are middle class and upper middle class, and it's really important for us to give the right education for people to be able to create their foundation. This is our mission in the 21st century, and I hope we're doing a good job of that, and we really focus on the majority of our audience, whereas other people just focus on the fringe minority. The rich people, the very wealthy people, we focus truly on the middle class and the upper middle class, which is the majority of the people, and our content is custom tailored to fit the needs of those people. And if you're watching this video, there's a very, very high chance that you are either middle class or upper middle class. That's most people in America, literally over 50%. That's most people in America. That's also most people in Canada. That's also most people in Europe. That's just how it is. And our channel has pointed out how certain countries behaved during the past health crisis, and we have pointed it out stronger than any other channel. And you can go around, you can watch the videos. And again, if you have followed us from the early days on, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We have a whole playlist on Asia and how my perception changed. And perception ultimately is reality. Whatever you perceive to be real will be real for you. These videos have been uploaded a long time ago, many years ago, 2021, 22, 23. You can go back and watch these videos on our channel. And I shot those videos when I was in Mexico, and when I realized the trajectory has shifted. Asia is no longer the same. I realized all of this. Go to our channel, watch these videos. There's some really, really good videos on this topic. But what you want to do is, as soon as possible, and again, this applies to people who don't want to go back to their Western country because maybe you're out of touch, you just don't resonate with your native country anymore. That's the case with me personally. I go back to visit friends and family. I go back to absorb the vibrant cultural experience, but I don't go back to integrate anymore. I don't go back to live there. That's not on the agenda. That's not even remotely possible, because I think if you've been abroad for a prolonged period of time, your value system changes, and that's the end of your old life. And reverting back is difficult to impossible. Very few people can do that because it takes a long time to adjust to a new place. For many people it does, for some people not. But then going back is usually one of the toughest things that you can do. And it's not very fulfilling because you're going back to a worse reality, and you don't want that. So if you're in Southeast Asia and you want to get residency with a path to citizenship, some great places are Paraguay, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay. You can look into Mexico, Panama. Like, all these places are really great. And these places, you know, they love foreigners. They do. The immigration policies mirror this. You know, it's not just a fabrication of our minds. It truly is a valid and accurate statement to make. And you want to go to a place where the immigration policies are in alignment with your overall vision. And you want to have this path to citizenship. You want to be able to get full reciprocity in civil and property rights, because at the end of the day, it's the only thing that matters in the long term, especially if you should happen to be stranded in a country. Hopefully it will be a country where you can actually own things, where you can own a business, where you can own property, where you can become a citizen. Because if you don't have these prerequisites, you're never going to be able to settle down in that place. It's incredible how many people don't want to pay attention to this fact until it's too late. And they're like, well, I should have listened to Gerald. I should have followed his advice, but I didn't, because I was too involved in this current cycle of mine. And I didn't want to leave this current cycle to create something that just has more longevity to it. It will become more important, more prevalent in the next 3 to 5 years. Some big things could happen in the next 3 to 5 years, and you want to position yourself to have the best chances for yourself, for your family. You want to do it now before it's too late. You don't want to be stranded in a place where they don't really want you, where you have no opportunity to create a life. What is your take on the current trajectory in Southeast Asia? Where do you currently live? We'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in obtaining a residence permit in a liberal country that welcomes you with open arms, please contact us now. You should see our website displayed right below the video, also on the screen. Thank you so much for watching Nomad Elite. We truly appreciate you, and we see you on the next video.